Welcome to the Power of Coaching, brought to you by the Daring Success Team. We're running to the end of the year. This is one of our two final episodes. Starting next year, we're going to have some amazing surprises in store for everyone to learn more about what the amazing Stan and Hardy do for their coaching. I am Hardy Brooklyn. I am a life coach based in Brooklyn, New York, and I work with my clients to help them live their truly authentic self in a world that is truly inauthentic and constantly brings up their limiting beliefs. Stan?
Thanks, Hardy. I am Stan Nelson. I am from Perth, Western Australia. I am moving forward and goal success coach. Help people get unstuck, have an extraordinary life, and overcome obstacles. And yes, so we were talking on Tuesday. We were talking about changing seasons. So for us here in Australia, we are in summer, and we're about to change seasons because the season really is, it's school holidays. It's the big school holidays for us. So it's 6, 7 weeks. And of course, it's summertime. So everyone's heading to the beach and doing that sort of stuff. And of course, Hardy, we were talking about seasonal depression because you guys are switching into winter mode.
The dark mode
Uh,
to darkness mode.
yeah. And you were saying that you were affected by it and you needed to get out in the sun and do stuff. Here in Australia, we're trying to keep out of the sun because otherwise you end up with sunburn. And of course, that's also Christmas. So yeah, we everyone just pretty much finished school today, and now they have 6 to 7 weeks off before we start again in beginning of February. All the schools go back again, so the kids are all ready to run
So
amok.
it's interesting because depending on where you are in the world, your changing seasons is going to affect you very differently. I work with my clients because right now, I mean, typically it would get a lot colder this time of year as it got darker, but the temperature really doesn't change as much now. It gets a little bit colder, but there's a lot of ups and downs in the temperature, but there's not a lot of ups and downs in the amount of daylight you're getting. So to get used to that, it's a little bit adaptive, more of an adaptive change. And I've been working with my clients to get out in the early hours of the day when the sun is brightest to get light, like you can see it on my face right now. I'm letting the sun hit me, even though it's probably screwing up this video, because getting that natural bright sunlight helps keep my clock going. And one of the things that I've done is I've had a lot of my clients, go ahead and get a bright light for inside if you don't have that ability, or if you're worried there's going to be a bunch of rainy days, you know, brighten up the space. And for me, a lot of it has to do with mental state. For my clients, a lot of it has less to do with the actual light than the mental state that's being created because of things that have typically happened during this time of year in the past. They didn't get that Christmas present they wanted to get. They didn't get that New Year's date they wanted. They didn't get to do things in their life that around this time of year of the light getting darker, that some other unrewarded thing in the past was there. And sometimes if you can figure out what that is, the change of the season isn't as bad. And that can be for any season.
Yeah, so we're typically, like I said, we're summer, but everyone's winding down for Christmas and New Year, and I find this is a really good time to reflect on what we've done for the year. So something I was doing with a client the other day was I just had him look at what he was grateful for in the world, and then I was like, okay, what achievements did you do this year? And he was like, ah, no, I haven't done any achievements. And after we finished, he had about 50. And some of them were small and some of them were big, and you were like, see, you did heaps of stuff. And people sometimes brush that over about, like when I was writing a course, and it was like, things like, okay, week one, I did all the slides, and then I got distracted, and week six I made the first video. But you're like, here's an achievement. I made the slides, I made the video, I made the next video, I posted the videos, I changed platforms and rebuilt the whole thing. Like, here's a series of achievements for you. What have you done? What are you grateful for? What have you done is a good one for this time of season. Getting ready for New Year, where we start going, what's your plans for next year?
And that's really good for people because when I look at things like that, and when I work with my clients and I ask them, what things have you accomplished? It doesn't matter. If it's something like, hey, I got to brush my teeth 5 out of the 7 days of the week. For somebody that wasn't brushing their teeth in the past, that's a great accomplishment. It doesn't have to be, I built a new house with my bare hands.
Yes.
It could be, I worked on making sure that I posted to Instagram once a month. Any incremental thing is an accomplishment from people. And any incremental thing you deserve to credit yourself for doing and achieving. Because we're here to achieve and reward ourselves, not take away. To me, I'm like, I look back on the year and I'm like, well, my goal last year was to post twice a week to Instagram. And I go back and I look on the year and I'm like, out of the 365 days, if you cut those, 52 weeks in half, 52 times two is 104. Well, you know what? I've made 64 posts. Pretty happy with myself
Awesome.
because
Yeah.
because that's a lot of work, but it's nowhere near my goal. But what's my goal going to be for next year? My goal for next year is going to be the same thing. Post twice a week because that's something that now is somewhat attainable. I was able to get a little bit more than halfway done and I patted myself on the back. I didn't go, "Oh, I can't believe you didn't achieve it. You didn't achieve it. You got to change your goal and set it back and maybe this year you should only set a goal of 70 instead of 104." You know
And
what?
I like to break personal bests. So, like, personal best is 64. You only need one more to break it next year.
Right. But my goal is going to be 104 because I want to post twice a week. And I'm going to be totally happy if I make the same. I'd love it if I do one more, but I'll be shit happy if I get close to what I did this year because I
Because
don't need
that'll
to.
bring you to the next question would be, how are you going to achieve that next year? Because that's always the next question for me. Is like, okay, you're celebrating this year, awesome. What are we doing next year, and how can we make it better?
And for me, my thing was I put a calendar entry in my calendar that said, hey, once a week, I'm going to get on the computer and I'm going to make my posts and I'm going to put it in a library and I'm going to schedule them in a piece of software called Buffer so that they would automatically post. And a lot of times, like the calendar entry will come in and I'm like, oh, I'm on a Zoom. So what am I going to do for myself to be more committed to that calendar entry? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with a theme that's more entertaining and more enjoying for me than just randomly looking for pictures all the time. So instead of doing something like, hey, I found a good quote, let me find a juxtaposition for picture I can use, I'm going to spend some time at the beginning of the year to tell the story that I want to tell throughout the year.
And that would be a good setup, setting up your content. And one of the coaches I work with, their thing was set a theme up for the month. So, like, for instance, January generally for me is goal setting because it's the beginning of the year. We start setting up the new season with new stuff. And it's like, okay, so if it's goal setting, I'm not looking for everything. I'm just going, what am I going to focus on for this week in goal setting? How can I help people with setting up goals and getting their actions and finding their obstacles and finding a solution to overcome that? And what's their limiting belief about their goal?
And what's the limiting belief about their goals? For a lot of people, that's great for them to work on. And that's something that I think that we need to work on towards the beginning of the year. Because you have to start somewhere. So for me, what's my limiting belief with the Instagram? The limiting belief around my Instagram goal is I'm not going to make any money off of it. I haven't seen a return on investment from it where other things that I do, I get a better return on investment or
So
better
my
instant gratification.
Yeah. So my question is, should you do Instagram posts or should you change to something else?
So I'm using the word Instagram right now in this conversation is very generic. I'm probably going to be doing more LinkedIn posts to be actual, and I'll just copy them and do duplicate content over to Instagram because the
And I
software
believe
just,
I believe Buffer can do that.
yes.
Excellent. I haven't got into any social media software to do that, but someone else mentioned Buffer the other day to me, and they mentioned Publer. So I was like, oh, I need to look into that at the beginning of the year. So one of my goals is to look into that so that I can post my stuff without having to do it all the time.
So I'm going to probably come up with a content catalog, but a content catalog that's telling a story of a journey. And because that's also how the workshops that I'm going to be doing, the practice sessions are going to be. It's all going to start somewhere, tell a story to get somewhere. So I'm going to have everything in my coaching world and probably performance world tell the same story because it'll make it much easier for me to make those posts. It'll make it more authentic for me to make those posts because now if I'm posting about goal setting and the goal setting is about coaching, the goal setting is about being coached, and the goal setting is about being a performer, that is easier for me to tell that story because that's my true
That's
self.
part of what you like to do, isn't it? Get into your true self, authentic self, I think is what you call it for people.
Yes, because for
Which
when you are your authentic self, you're so much happier in life. You have so much less stresses. You worry about so many less things, unless you're a warrior as your authentic self. But for me, it also it becomes easier to do things. So when I'm working on things that are in my authentic self space, I have less barriers. Even if I can't do it, don't know what they are, learning as I go, but it's my authentic self. It's what I want to do. It's what I enjoy doing. It's what my heart says, I already do this. And that makes it easier to complete the tasks. And I figured that out for myself when I look back at which posts got posted. So I was like, oh, I just did this amazing event and I can tell a story with these pictures about living your true self, taking a chance, trying something new, following your dreams. Is when there was a connection to my authentic self, the posts came a lot easier. I didn't mind doing them. The editing went so much faster.
it's always the way when you're doing something that you like.
Part of it also is now I've created this, but one of the other things that I want to tell people is that when you're dealing with seasonal change, it's really good to have conversations with your coaches and your friends. Don't keep it inside. Let other people know how you're feeling. You don't need to go through it alone. So need to how to cope with what happens when the season changes because for different people, it's different. So for instance, the days get longer, that might affect somebody negatively or might affect somebody the same way as the days getting shorter because they have anxiety about the different things that have to happen in the summertime. They have more work, it's brighter, it's hotter, it's going to be sweaty, it's going to be sticky, it might be cold, depending on where you live. So don't think about changing seasons as something that's only going from warmth to cold. It's changing seasons. It's whether you live in a 4 season climate, a 3 season climate, or a 2 season climate, or a single season climate. Single season climate, you don't have changes. But all of the others, everybody gets affected when the season changes. We get affected differently, whether it's the amount of light, whether it's the temperature, whether it's whether it's wet or dry. It all affects people differently. So we need to be able to cope and talk to people about it and understand what we're going through. And how do we manage those stresses, Stan?
I think the hardest part is probably the change of season at the moment. The stresses for everyone is Christmas and New Year, and a lot of it for a lot of our friends is the change of season is their kids have now graduated primary school and are heading to high school. That's a whole different kettle of fish. Welcome to the big world. Or for some of them, it was, hey, my kids have finished school. They've had a student at school for 23 years, and now they're done and they're off to universities and work. And that's a whole different season to come into. And they're like, what do we do now? Our house is not quite empty because a couple of the boys are still staying at home, but they're off to work, and they're off to girlfriends and boyfriends and parties, and like, and they go, we hardly see them as much as we'd like. And the season's changing. Yeah, they're like, I think I need a hobby, and I'm like, yeah.
What are a couple of things as far as besides from this stress, since we're changing seasons, whether it's from winter to spring, whether it's from fall to winter, whether it's from summer to fall, whether it's from spring to fall, whether it's from rainy to dry, whether it's from dry to rainy, whether it's from the warm season to the cold season, the windy season to the not windy season. What are some kind of healthy behaviors that we can kind of start working around to help kind of level us out? Like things like meditation?
um, I would say, yeah. So some people are into meditation. I'm a little bit more like do some physical exercise is one. Journaling is something that I always get people to do. Meditation is definitely a go-to. It's probably not mine as much. I'm a little bit more like do yoga, which is a pretty much a form of moving meditation, is what it really is.
So so that's interesting because most of the professional organizations like Psychology Today, the Mayo Clinic, NIA, they all recommend increasing your physical activity. They really recommend doing a physical activity increasing because of all of the other positive things. And then in aligning with that, improving your sleep patterns.
Yeah.
So getting regular sleep, getting the minimum amount of sleep, don't go to sleep. Like if it's the wintertime, don't sleep when it's all dark. Get a normal amount of sleep, like, get 8, 9 hours of sleep a night. Don't get 12 hours of sleep a night because that's going to put you into not so happy world. And then also don't just meditate. Meditate while you're running around the block. Meditate while you're going to jujitsu class. Meditate while you're at a yoga class. Meditate when you're at a Tai Chi class. You know, do the physical activities because I see it in the people immediately around me. When they do the physical activity, they are so much happier to be around.
And for nothing else, but I think walking is a really good activity. Um, and I even got into like walking workouts. I injured my knee about probably 3.5 years ago. So like being able to do while I was rehabbing, being able to do anything, I found some walking workouts on YouTube. And some of them only have four basic moves. It's not aerobics. You don't have to memorize heaps of stuff. But the fact that somebody's there telling me to change from walking to knees up, or sidestepping, is sometimes beneficial, because otherwise you go, oh, I could just sit down on the couch and do nothing. And I don't really like to do nothing, but I like, you can get behind. You can go, I'll do that workout later on.
Right.
They're two coaches, and they always make time in the morning to go walking together as part of their relationship, because they talk to each other. He says, my friend actually said, well, my wife was away for 3 weeks while she was on a course. And he says, I had to walk, and I was doing walking meditations stuff. He says it was a bit strange when she came back, and I wanted to continue with the meditations, and she wanted to do the talking. Like changing of seasons. Yes, you have to change back now.
Yep.
But that's some good handy stuff. Kind of one that Isabel, who's not here, who's been part of the group as well, she's into art and drawing and stuff. So that can be very good mindful stuff. Is just drawing. and a friend got into what he called picture journal. So he just kind of writes down what he does for the day, and he draws it in picture as opposed to trying to write it out. He might just draw a volleyball net and says, "I played beach volleyball," or "I read a book," or whatever, and he just kind of turns it into a picture as opposed to stuff. And he says, "I find it really relaxing for my brain to draw the journal as opposed to have to write everything."
I like that. I like the fact that, we're reminding people that you don't only have to write the journal. You can draw, you can sketch, you can watercolor, you can do whatever you want to do journal. You just need to get it from your mind into a different medium. So it's coming up to the end, and I just kind of want to do a recap. So just a couple of things. As the seasons change, we want to manage our limiting beliefs and our preconceived notions about those seasons. We want to manage the stress that goes on around those seasons. We want to build our healthier behaviors, such as increasing our physical activity, improving our sleep patterns and making them more consistent, and being honest with ourselves when these things come and when these things are happening so that we can work to better understand them and to better not have them define us.
And if you're struggling mentally, please get some support, even from your friends or your family, or if need be, professional help. Because yeah, people struggle immensely. We know a lot of people that struggle immensely over Christmas. Just they have things that happen around the Christmas time. Their mum passed away, or you know a relationship broke it up, or something like that. So that can change their mood as well.
So please, if you're depressed or anything, please get the appropriate help. Or if you need to reach out to us, you can reach us at www.daringsuccessteam.com. You can find us on LinkedIn at Daring Success Team. Just search for us on LinkedIn or on Facebook, Daring Success Team. I am Hardy Brooklyn from Brooklyn, New York. You can find me at hardybrooklyn.nyc on Instagram. And Stan, how can they find you?
They can find me at I can never remember my thing. So they can find me at coaching at daringsuccessteam.com. I usually have a look at that. They can find me in the Facebook group, and I can never remember my LinkedIn or my Facebook stuff. That'll be one of my goals for next year. Seasonally figure out who you are and where you can catch me.
Next week or the next episode, we're going to be talking about forgiving, which is really important when you're dealing with changing seasons. So, being compassionate and forgiving people and forgiving yourself. Till next time, have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye.